Greetings, ladies, and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party of September 6th, 2020. We are pleased today, Transhumanist Party presidential and vice presidential candidates, Charlie Kam and Parrish. And to converse with them today, we have a panel of US Transhumanist Party officers and advisors, including myself, Gennady Stolярov II, the chairman of the US Transhumanist, David Shoemaker, our director of visual art, Art Ramon Garcia, our secretary, Pavel Ilin, director of sentient rights advocacy, Tom Ross, our director of scholarship, Dan Elton, and our esteemed biotechnology advisor, CEO of Sierra Sciences, Dr. Bill Andrews, also a good friend of mine and a good friend of our candidates. So this promises to be a great conversation to inform our members of the activities of our candidates, of their plans for the next 2 months, and also to have them answer some questions from you, from our audience. Now, I understand that the general election in November is fast approaching. We essentially have 2 months to elevate the profile of the US Transhumanist Party. And in an ideal situation, we would have wanted to have more time to do that. But I am really thrilled to have gotten to the point where we have such candidates of great knowledge, great caliber, great commitment to the transhumanist vision and to the goal of achieving radical life extension within our lifetimes. So the first question that I would have for our candidates is, in this admittedly short time window of the next 2 months, what do you think can be done via the Kam-Parrish 2020 campaign to raise public awareness about the US Transhumanist Party and grow our membership?
Well, thanks for having us. And, you know, as far as growing the membership goes, it's really comes down a lot to these types of forums where we can have interviews like we do every Sunday here with different guests, because that attracts people and then they get to hear what we stand for, as well as all the good interviews that have been happening. I've been invited to talk, and I have, and now Liz and I have done it in partnership in various places around the world. We did it in the UK, or I did it in the UK. There was also Malaysia recently with Dr. Sharif Rana. Let's see. So we had, we also did one in Africa. So I mean, it's great that we're able to get around the world, because transhumanism is not just it's not just our political party, but it is a movement, and it's a global movement. So spreading the word anywhere gets more attention to our party. And the other important thing that spreading this word, the other important thing would be to get people involved on local levels. I mean, obviously, the chances of us winning the presidency are not really there because, well, we have a crazy duopoly in this country and it's just not allowed, essentially. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't have a lot of local people register and be prepared for the next coming elections. So the goal would be to keep on having as many good interviews as we can wherever we can, and also, you know, get our word out on social media as much as possible. And having a vice presidential candidate like Liz Parrish on team really helps a lot, because she's very well known and respected in our community. And I'll turn it over to her to talk a little bit more about what we can do.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, so
thank you.
So what we want people to do is look into what the Transhumanist Party is all about. I mean, good information can spread as fast as bad information if you help it do so. And working towards a new future, that's what we're going to need to do. So if you don't know what we're all about, if you're interested in what we're all about, please go to transhumanist-party.org. I'd like you to read the values and the platform, because I think that you will see that we represent really what you want for the future. And what you can do is you can share and like that information, share it with as many people as you can, so that in the future we can pressure the political system as it is to make really mandatory and critical changes for a better future for mankind and the planet. And you know, you can also get involved by joining the party and getting as many people to join as possible. And as Charlie pointed out, this is really a global movement. This isn't just something for people in the United States. This is that we have something to offer for everyone. This is a global community, and these are global ideas, and that is what's really important. So sharing information is the #1 thing you can do, and then letting your voice be heard. You know, contact us and let us know what you think is underrepresented and what needs more representation in the future, because this party is all about change for the betterment of the planet and humans and every species involved.
Wonderful. Very much, both Charlie and Liz, for your answers. And these are great constructive and practical suggestions for what can be done in the next 2 months and what others can do as well to help. So with this, I wanted to ask a question about a recent statement that the US Transhumanist Party released. It's available on our website. I linked to it in the chat. It's our statement condemning police brutality stemming from recent events in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as well as some of the crowd. I wanted to ask for our candidates' perspectives on a different path forward. Yeah, I believe my internet.
Yeah, your audio, it's breaking up quite a bit, but I think we get the gist of your question. You know, as far as what happened in recent times, you know, with Jacob Blake, I mean, it's just it's unacceptable. It's unfortunate. It's sad. There's so many bad things that you could point out there. You know, any form of police brutality is just not something that should be acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Even what happened, which wasn't police brutality, but what happened to Rand Paul, you know, when he was being accosted, just when he was leaving the Republican convention by a mob that didn't like him. Any forms of violence, of course, we condemn, and we don't like that. But what I would say is that I think the reason that you see such tension that's going on now is because it comes, you know, from the top down. So if you recall, you know, our President Trump, sorry about that, I'm Freudian. President Trump, when he was in front of a police crowd, when he was talking in front of a police congregation at a function, he made light of the fact that, well, when you put them in the car, you know, when you put them in the car, make sure you don't worry about covering their head, you know, like, and everybody laughed, and then, you know, he joked about that. Or when he held a rally, he would say, you know, don't worry if somebody looks like they're doing something, you know, beat them up or take them out. Don't worry, I'll cover your legal expenses. When you have that kind of attitude from the top, it just starts to pervade throughout the country. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible attitude for a leader, essentially the leader of the strongest, he's in the strongest position in the free world, to say those kind of things. And because it does get attention, not just in our country, but around the world. So having that continues to create the kind of tension. And of course, there's inherent racism that's still in our society. And, you know, couple that with somebody like Trump saying those kind of things, police brutality not only could get out of hand, but it could get now misinterpreted. Even if they're trying to do something good and it becomes an accident, it'll be interpreted as if it was intentional. So there's so many things wrong when you have the leader at the top causing the attitudes to just become ugly. So as the representative for this party, our goal, along with Liz, and I know she made a very good statement about this, which she needs to talk about in a moment. I think that what we would do had we been in power, or even if Zoltan had won last time, we're a party about compassion, about empathy. I mean, the goal would be to use technologies to make us better people in all sorts of ways, and then have a better attitude towards our fellow man, because we don't discriminate based on any differences, really. We're all in this together, and we have to keep working together, and that's how society can grow better. And like I said, I'll turn this off to Liz now.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. I think that, these are really important times for really important conversations. So, the great thing about the Transhumanist Party, the thing that I really had to get behind, is the supporting of science and data. So one good thing that we have is we have the example across nations of good data that shows what actually works and what doesn't work. Vastly, the US has been a punishment-related society, from everything from your earliest school experiences into incarceration. And we know that punishment societies sort of romanticize and they aspire new forms of punishment. And we vastly need to change that for the future. Rehabilitation works more than punishment. We have some of the cruelest incarcerated systems in the world as far as industrialized countries. This is considered one of the worst places that you could be put in jail in the industrialized country succession. That's not acceptable. We have a lot of people who have been incarcerated over crimes that are, it's a waste of our time. It's become a privatized system, and it's potentially illegal, and we need to move past that. But what happens is this role of punishment has infiltrated every system of our existence. The police brutality and the brutality against the police has become actually an acceptable way to move forward. From the treatments of people who have even been, implicated in minor crimes, to the amount of people that we have had on death row who have never even committed the initial crime, is devastating. We need to move forward into technology. We need to work towards understanding the criminal basis. We need to underpin what is happening at a basic level of what is happening at the psychological level of the criminal and the police officer who feels so inclined to motivate their movements against people in such a really criminal manner. And why are they trained to do so? And we need to essentially create an upheaval in the system and really start to focus on rehabilitation over punishment. And again, we have a lot of good data around the world. And what I love about this party, as we look at data and we look at putting people in charge who are actually experts in motivating us towards a better future. We cannot continue on fighting, hurting one another, being afraid of the police and the government, whom really are the people who we put into power to support us and the functioning of the country. We need to move past this. And so this sort of brutality is now moved deeply into this new election. The divisiveness and the amount of abuse and now murders and deaths that have been drawn on party lines, completely unacceptable. This is not the way this country should move forward. We need to move forward with compassion and peace and rehabilitation. And that is of everyone. We will all need to be rehabilitated from this system that we have been indoctrinated into, that we now believe in, and we are taking sides that are extraordinary. No abuse against a human should be tolerated.
Yes. There were those important remarks. Now, in the course, for instance, Tom Ross, Art Ramon Garcia and Pavel Ilin have to contribute to this conversation or ask our candidates questions, please feel free to do that.
You broke up a little bit, but I gather the idea is for us to weigh in because we also had statements in that. Correct. So anyway, yeah, my opinion is that one of the big problems, one of the systemic fuels of this thing, is the media. It is the it's the adage of the if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing, and that is just a way for stations and networks to get ratings and views, and it's directly tied to ratings and revenue, and that's a problem. It's obviously a systemic problem, but it's even deeper than that. There is a social norm where things like compassion or rehabilitation and these approaches seem weak, right? It's the woke culture. People who are vegetarians or vegans, it's not macho enough, and so it feels like there's got to be this shift in understanding that and you look at it like there's first principle arguments to be made that the smarter AI gets, the more cooperative it becomes because it's the most effective way to be. So in general terms, the smarter it gets, the kinder it becomes in a perfect world. And knowing that the smarter something is, the kinder and gentler and more compassionate and coalesced it can become, needs to be indoctrinated more so into our culture. I mean, we need to understand that that being compassionate is very powerful. It's a very strong position. When you're driven towards brutality or a punishment type of society, as Liz was talking about, that's a symptom of toxic masculinity. It's a symptom of people who have not thought through things enough. And so I think there's got to be a systemic kind of even cultural shift, because we're seeing that with Trump. He's really the worst representation of what a man could be, in my opinion. I know that there's a lot of people who are Trumpsters out there, and I don't want to offend anybody, but in my view, he's just so obviously this classic bully, this classic kind of insecure archetype. And hopefully that's going to be the pinnacle of that archetype in our culture, and we now will be able to easily identify these things anyway. So I think there's got to be a real push toward the idea that people who are like that, people who are brutal, people who choose to do these types of things, are acting out of fear. They're driven by their amygdala. They're driven by their limbic system. They are fearful, and to overcompensate for their fear, they brutalize or they become bullies. And that message needs to be very clear, that people who are like that are frightened little people, and they're afraid. You want to hug them, in fact, But and if we can make that point clearly in our culture, that people who are like that. I try to stay in a space with Trump where, God, that kid, as a kid, he must have had a real bad experience. He was obviously neglected. We're learning things about his early childhood where, his mother was out of the picture for a while, and his father was just a beast. And so you can kind of understand why he ended up being that way. It's very hard to stay in that place of understanding him in that way. But to do that, is, I think, very important. And I think we just need to talk more about how people who are like that are expressing a real insecurity, and they're expressing a real fear that needs to be satiated in some way. So that's one of the things I try to do is talk more about how love and compassion and these expressions are so much more powerful and so much more, even macho. They're not based on fear. It's a very strong energy that we need to talk more about, because if somebody is brutal or a bully, they're afraid. They're scared, little children, and we got to see them that way to understand them.
Yeah. Can I weigh in a bit on this? building
Sure.
building off what Tom just said, I think there is a too much fear of the other side, and reluctance, and building off what Liz said a little bit, reluctance to even, or what Charlie said, reluctance to even associate with the other side, or just even, sit down and talk to the other side. So you have people that are getting basically, run out of their own community and social network just because they had someone on a podcast for a conversation, from the other side. That's not healthy. And so my basic philosophy here is that there's basically two ways that people can resolve differences, through words or through violence. And when you don't allow people to resolve their differences, when you don't have a culture which promotes resolving differences through words, people eventually they get frustrated, they get angry, they can't speak their mind, and there's no interaction. So eventually it builds up, and you have violence. So my focus, that's why I've been very focused on encouraging discourse and communication between the different sides. And I think that the Transhumanist Party has also adapted this sort of ethos of being a big tent, where we want to encourage people from different sides to come in here and work together on the things we agree with, and realize it's okay that people have different points of view. Some people are of different points of view just because that's what they grew up with, or maybe they just watch Fox News all the time, and people can change their mind. I believe that words matter. Arguments have an effect. It may not seem like your arguments have an effect, but I believe that they do. So that's my focus throughout this whole era of Trump and everything has been on encouraging free speech and conversation. And I think part of the reason Trump was elected was actually that we had not been properly encouraging that. So it was sort of an outlet. Voting for Trump was sort of an outlet for people who felt like they couldn't express themselves because.
And I'd like to add to that. Actually, I think we're all adult people here, and the true reason behind the violence and the police brutality and everything else that's going on right now is not really Trump. It's not really what he's doing or thinking. It doesn't matter. It's actually the inequality, like economic inequality, monetary poverty is a true reason behind the violence. So as a party, we better address a true reason of what's going on rather than just having a conversation about how kind we should be or give a hug to somebody, because that's not really a standing point for a true political organization like this. So let's focus on something more specific. And I suggest that Liz and Charlie voice their opinion on how to actually fight the inequality and how we can reduce the amount of unemployment, which is actually part of the big reason why the violence is happening right now. So Charlie and Liz, please, talk of that a bit.
Okay, well, the inequality that's out there, of course, is something that's been, if you're talking about racial inequality, has been around a long time, and even the inequality amongst the genders. The problem, as I mentioned before, is when you have a guy at the top who's condoning these types of things, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. And so if we were able to take over and if we won and became the president and vice president, first things we'd want to do is address those issues. And you would have to do it in ways that are a big overhaul of the system. There would have to be a lot more scrutiny as to what's really going on as far as what are the, racial hirings, why are women not getting paid the same amount as men? I mean, those things can be addressed. So, you'd have to really kind of go after all of that stuff. So these are big issues, and what you pointed out is accurate, that they exist and they're a basis for this. I think as the future progresses, we'll see the economy of abundance help when we have mass production of things. So there won't be such a a limited supply of things, because this is still where corruption can always erupt. When you have certain companies that are worth 200, they're worth trillions of dollars, and their owners or CEOs are worth 200 billion or 300, whatever it is. It's really a problem. And so we kind of have to really overhaul the system in big ways. And, that's where I think the USTP would be ideal for situations that are currently upon us, because we are just on top of so many problems right now, not only the violence, but this outbreak of COVID. I mean, all these things are toppling into our society at one time. And we have to look at these things in a rational, critical thinking way. And that's something that I think is missing in a big way right now with our current administration. I've had this discussion with other people that had Trump run in, let's say, some other country, maybe in Norway or something, he would have never gotten any traction. So it's not just Trump, it is the electorate that is looking for answers, because if the society was all wonderful, we wouldn't have voted him in. So it's much deeper than just blaming him. I agree with you on that. And Liz, go ahead, please.
Well, I think that everyone here has had really good points. And what Inessa is pointing out is that we sort of honed in on some right now issues. But the truth of the matter is that there is an inequality and inequity to what's happening in our country. And that is what is driving much of the things that are coming to light today. They have been around for decades. They have been not independent to one party. We have had police brutality and minorities being killed by the police for my entire life. We have had inequity in the country. We need to make strides, and that is part of my rehabilitation stance. It's not just for police officers or some minority group. It is for the country as a whole, a re-education of the system. And I want to talk on something that really important that Tom Ross talked about is our lack of compassion. And, Charlie and I addressed this in one of the last interviews that we did. I believe that we need a nationwide education program for children. We need to be able to, if families can't help what's happening internally in their family, the community can. And if we have a nationwide net to educate children about what's happening in the psychologies of the people around them, we can net and help kids before they maybe turn into psychopaths. I mean, I hate to use that word in terminology, but the fact is that, because of our conditioning, we have bred some people to think in a way that is actually quite dangerous for the people around them, and that brings harm to society. But if we can help those people early on, and we can actually be conditioned to understand and meet them with compassion, we could drastically change the idealism, the thought process, and the compassion of the country from the youth up. And I think that is a mandatory thing. But as a party, we do need to look at the education system as a greater whole, ensuring that everyone gets access to it. We have looked at countries since the consideration of this election, such as Norway, who have a much better rehabilitation program for criminals. We have looked at countries like Finland, who have a much better education program for everyone who is a national of that country, has a free education, and therefore, again, they have the first doctors and lawyers who are children of rudimentary workers, janitors and housekeepers and things like that, which are also very honorable positions, and we need to uphold that. We need to make sure that we have pride in everything we do. That's one thing that this country is vastly lacking, again, based on punishment and the visualization of what success actually is. And we need to change that and support people's choices and enliven the country again through a very compassionate stance of understanding and, again, rehabilitation and creating equity in all positions of development and employment. And one thing, you know, is how do you make sure that women are paid the same amount as men, or transgender people, or people who might identify in some other way? Well, we need to actually develop those systems. And what Charlie and I are saying is that we would reach into the professionals, people in academia, people from the Futures of Humanities Institute, people who have actually worked on these sort of areas as scholars, professionally, and looked at existential risk of a multitude of sources, which also includes the brutality and corruption of societies, and help us work our way gently out of this in a way that, you know, people would appreciate and could actually see value in their lives within the first 4 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I love the idea of bringing in some academics, people with actual, you know, who, you know, not corporatists. There's some people who have an altruistic mindset, have been studying how to make a functional society and economy and such. There's, you know, people at Cambridge study for existential risk, I think would be a good candidate as well, because they're looking at systems now, bringing systems thinking into existential risk, looking at how systems, you know, might become destabilized by certain technologies or different things. So I really like that idea. I also just wanted to say that I didn't mean to suggest that, you know, the lack of discourse of conversation was the only cause of violence. I mean, obviously inequality is a huge problem, and I think that's maybe a bigger problem right now with you know, with the pandemic going on, exacerbating that. But at the same time, yeah. So,
I think you were right on. I think you were,
okay.
I mean, it all comes down to communication. I didn't get touch on that. I got a little bit lost in my thoughts, but honestly, you're right on with that. It's all about communication. And with communication, I mean, if you turn the sky purple tomorrow, a lot of people are going to be upset. But if there was a scientific reason to do it, and you educated everyone on that reason and purpose, which there isn't, I've made this up, then, obviously you're going to have mass acceptance, and it really is communication. And there's an incredible breakdown of communication right now that is disruptive and horrible.
I think filter bubbles are part of that. On social media, people are stuck in their filter bubble, but just also our culture is it's not tolerant of open discussion, I feel, and so what happens is you end up just staying with your tribe, and you get these sort of tribes that kind of brew in their own little bubble and view the other side, the other tribes, as abject horror and evil. We need to be like Tom said, be more compassionate than one another. We're all fundamentally the same, right? So anyway, that's kind of been my whole focus. But I do, there's other reasons for many other reasons for dysfunction we have right now.
Yeah, I would like the fact that Tom mentioned compassion and Liz mentioned education. Obviously, we want to educate, especially young generation. That's why I'm so passionate about teaching, because as I teach computer science and artificial intelligence, I always talk about philosophy, religion, anything that helps people to think for themselves, not just to become robots and do whatever the other people says. So how many of you, well, politics is also very interesting. Obviously, it's really complicated. There are a lot of good ideas, but those good ideas, right? Education, compassion, charity, and so on, they can be done in the Republican Party. They've been done in the Democratic Party. So why do they need to be done by Transhumanist Party? Now, so that is a big question we have to answer. Now, before we go there, let's talk about this. The Trump phenomenon is very, very interesting, because how many of you actually have close friends who are a very strong supporter of Trump? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So some of us. So I can
Not
tell you
close,
this.
but I know quite a few.
One of my friends is actually a very highly educated PhD degree in engineering. We talk about highly, educated, engineering field, PhD. He's a 100% supporter of Trump. He will not vote for, Biden or anyone else. Now, but he told me he really disagreed with Trump on racism, on sexism, on dividing country. Basically, he does not like his personality at all. Okay, he's not a Christian, but he doesn't, do what a real Christian does in real life. So, but the fact that he likes how he is taking the country, he likes what he's doing for the country, so to speak. So again, I think it's debatable. That's what politics is about, right? Whether it's good or bad and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to understand why people are supporting him, even though they disagree with him on a lot of things, right? They don't like the fact that he lies all the time, and yet he likes the fact that he handles economy. The coronavirus is a big mess, of course, but again, there are so many people still supporting his view on coronavirus. So you see my point? My point is that everybody, we shouldn't say anybody who's, we shouldn't label people as being stupid or being conservative or being liberal. It doesn't work. In fact, it's just dividing the country. It's just dividing, people. The fact is that, this person that I know, super compassionate, he likes to do charity. He's very open-minded, and yet he supports Trump, So how to explain that, right? So it's almost like we're looking at the leader who's very charismatic, okay? And therefore, people forgive him for all the sins he has committed. So we need a leader from Transhumanist Party or some other parties that are actually equally charismatic, and yet they can provide more. For example, if you talk about, equality, or talk about education, how are you going to actually deliver what you're suggesting, right? So I think science and technology is one way to do it. For example, we can let artificial and super intelligence come with the programs. And then, we have the leader from Transhumanist Party or other parties to say, okay, this solution suggested by the artificial super intelligence is the right solution, and try to convince people that is the case. So that's just one example that I can think of that will work. Otherwise, we can talk all day and all night, and people will say, oh, why don't you just join Bernie Sanders' party? Democratic Party, just follows, Bernie Sanders.
Bravo, that was the best set so far.
There's no need for transhumanism per se. But so the idea is that we need to, promote, educate people about transhumanism. In fact, I tell all my students about transhumanism all the time. They're very curious,
Yeah, it should be in K through 12 education and philosophy and critical thinking as well.
Yeah, I think that one key to remember is Trump will be gone at some point, and he is a symptom. And I think he is a symptom of the lack of inclusivity. And I think that's why people tribalize. That's why people get into their bubbles, is because they feel they belong. Belonging is a very important rung on the Maslow hierarchy, right? And if we often will, we would prefer to belong to a group, even though we don't necessarily agree with it. And we will banish an outcast and lose compassion for somebody who's not part of this group because we crave belonging so much. And so I think when we talk about compassion as a transhumanist party, not only because it's the smarter way to be, because cooperation is the most effective way to solve things, but because we need to be inclusive. We really need to include people, because when Trump is gone, these people will still be around, and they'll be looking for another person to fill that void. And we need to avoid the void and fill it with bringing these people in. I mean, and it's difficult. You know, I really try to stay away from any political talk online or in social media, because it just pulls you in, and it's a divide and rule strategy that they're using. And it's so easy to get sucked into that. I have so many countless posts that I have written and been very cathartic about, and just deleted them and didn't post them after all, or made them only for me to see, just to get them out. But because I know that once you start taking a position, you're going to split your audience in two. And so I think that the key is to remember these are our fellow Americans, regardless of how we're all acting now, whether they're anti-maskers or anti-vaxxers or anti-science, whatever it is, whatever position they're taking, we're all a country. And in general, we're all, a species. But he will be gone, and the key will be to heal the split here. And the only real way to do that is to be inclusive. And that's what I like about this party, is that we have everyone from, Trump supporters to libertarians to, dyed in the wool hardcore liberals. And there's a place for all of us. I mean, I have issues as an officer. I have issues with one of our core ideals that we talk about. I won't get into now, but that just, it's a demonstration of the ability for us to accept all types of, and not be challenged by anybody who doesn't agree with something that we believe in. So I think that'll be key. That's the key to compassion, I think, is inclusivity, listening to people, hearing them, understanding that these people voted for this guy for various different reasons, whether they're PhDs or whether they're blue collar workers. There was a reason that they felt they weren't being heard. They weren't included in the process. And that's what we can offer. We can offer not only an inclusion into the process, but we're talking about policies that will matter to our kids. These aren't science fiction things. My area of sentient rights, sentient robots or even animal rights, sounds like it's a future thing, but it's going to happen within mine and my kids and their kids' lifetimes. And this is the only party I know of that's talking about these things. And that's why I think one of the reasons I was drawn to this party was because it has very strong policies that could thwart human trafficking and child exploitation. That's what drew me to the Constitution and to this party. And I think one of the best things we can do is to rally around a central issue like that, have one central issue that we focus on wholly, a moonshot type of focus. And I believe it should be something like human trafficking or stopping child exploitation, and putting all of our resources to this one thing. Because when people are working on that type of thing, when you are working on an issue like child exploitation, there's no room for egos. Nobody's jockeying for position. No one is, empathy makes egos leave the room. And so when we're all in that space of working on something so important that's happening right now, within earshot of most of us watching this thing, and we focus on that rather than getting involved in the personality cult of Trump or all of these issues. If we all banded around one central issue at a time and put all of our resources toward it, just to keep us focused and not scattered, but to keep all of these different types of people that are attracted to transhumanism, whether conservative, liberal, whatever they are, when we're all focused on this type of issue, especially when it comes to kids, we an amazing problem-solving capacity is unleashed. And I think that's, for me, that's the best thing we could be doing, is putting all of our efforts into a very specific issue like that, a cause. And because when we're focused on that, none of this other stuff matters. And we will attract more people by being productive in that way. I think that would really do a lot to increase our membership and just keep us out of the whole fringe of politics.
Thank you, Tom, for suggestion. I think right now it would be opportune to go to some of the audience questions from the chat. And the first question comes from Jay LaRoe, who asks, what is the US Transhumanist Party's stance on UBI, Universal Basic Income? And of course, the short answer is we as provided through an innovative means, the federal land dividend, which is not subject to any taxes or additional burdens on the population. But Charlie and Liz, I'd be interested in your thoughts on UBI. Charlie, I know you've thought about this question for a long time.
Yeah, and your point about the federal land dividends is, as is expressed in our documents on our website, anybody could read that, is something that I believe in. And the idea of UBI, it's funny because it's become a question, but it's one of those things that it's inevitable. You know, the idea that we're going to somehow not have mass production and economy of abundance coming it's strange to me, but I know a lot of people don't necessarily understand it or get it because they don't follow it. And it's not, it's not because you don't, know about it or anything, or maybe it is because you don't know. But if you see where technology is taking us and the way automation is happening all around us, we can see that it's just a matter of time before there's just not going to be enough jobs. And we're going to have to deal with that one way or another. And UBI, Universal Basic Income, I don't think of it as a socialist policy. People can call it what they want, but to me, it really feels more like it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, of course, the argument is, well, would UBI, if you started giving everybody money, would that bankrupt our system? Well, in the future, because we are a futuristic type of party, and we do put technology at the forefront, the idea would be by developing 3D printers or molecular manufacturing devices that become inexpensive and that they can be provided in all households, you'll be able to mass produce a lot of the things that people need. And it won't cost nearly what it would cost if you just gave them the money to go out and buy it. So those kind of things are coming. I mean, it's a little bit in the future, but that's kind of what I see as a way to supplement people for, being able to give the UBI, because if you don't give people the income they need, then you're going to be seeing situations like what's happening, where there's violence in the streets, or there's going to be looting, because you can't just let people not satisfy that first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs without shelter or without rent, because that's another issue that's coming up. There's been a lot of banks have been deferring payments for people, and there's been a moratorium on payments for households for mortgages, but that's all gonna end soon. And when it ends, there's gonna be a lot of stress on our society. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But I don't see not doing UBI. That's my stance. But Liz, what do you think?
I think that this is a really good time to start talking about UBI. From the University of Utrecht to the University of Berkeley, there have been a lot of research studies on what this would mean for the population. And again, we need to turn to the data. So there's a lot of positive outcome that can actually be utilized by these studies. One of the things that I think that works in the interim, this goes back to a case of equity, is doing UBI initially before job extinction based on performance. For instance, I think that education should be a free right to everyone all the way through PhD, and that using UBI as an incentive to get people to take higher education would be fantastic. Many people are not even able to get an education due to financial reasons. Imagine if you incentivized the education with financial benefit. Everyone in our population is potential to solve a really global problem that we are suffering from today or will suffer from in the near future. And we are vastly overlooking the benefits of adding these people to our education system and benefiting from the processes, the products that they could produce for us to make a better world. So capturing that audience is really important. So again, getting back to equity and incentivizing and UBI, I think that they all go hand in hand. Initially, they could be used right away. And then as we work into the modern society where there's even less jobs than there are now, as we know is coming, then we can transition more smoothly.
Thank you, Charlie and Liz. And now we have another question from Mike Lazine. And Mike asks, what the US Transhumanist Party done to attract any prominent celebrities that can join our party? And I would say, in response to that question, that both Liz Parrish and Bill Andrews, who are in this discussion, I would consider them to be celebrities. They're certainly well known for their activism, their research, how they've brought the life extension field and the gene therapy field into prominence. And I would invite comments from both Liz and Bill as to what attracted them to the Transhumanist Party, but also from Charlie, because Charlie was instrumental in getting Liz to agree to be the vice presidential candidate for this election.
I don't think of myself as a celebrity. I think of myself as a patient advocate, but thank you so much. And I do think that we need to get more prominent people involved in this movement, and maybe by petitioning them or getting people to reach out and send our information to those higher bound celebrities. Remember, I got involved in trying to treat biological aging because I wanted to cure childhood disease. And that goes to something that Tom is saying. And there is a platform for us that is very strong through genetic advocacy and the improvement of legal issues around the use of drugs. We can cure childhood disease. It just so happens to turn out we can also cure aging along hand. So I got involved in aging research because it just so happened to turn out that the treatments that treat biological aging will actually, everyone that we look at BioViva will cure a childhood disease. So that was essentially my platform. We could help everyone at the same time. So you know, this goes to the root of how I got involved in this to begin with. And then, of course, I met Bill Andrews along the way with his incredible technology that could help everyone on the planet live healthier and longer, including children and adults. So thank you so much for thinking of me in that way. I don't think of myself in that way. And I think that we do have a lot that we could do to reach out to people who are more prominent and have even larger social networks to sell and send this information to them. Because I don't think that anyone can look at the transhumanist values and platform and disagree with any of it. I don't think that there is any party member that I've ever met that wouldn't. And so really it's just getting that information out there. Bill, would you talk about, you are more of a celebrity than I am, for sure.
Bill, I think you're on mute.
Ah, I thought you were in control of the mute. Okay, am I muted now?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, because you must have muted it. So I was saying that I got a kind of laugh out of something that Liz said. The RADFest conference has lost its celebrity speaker, and for this year only. And so I've been trying to get some other celebrities to be involved, and I'm calling these people that are really famous movie stars, talking to them, and I'm constantly shocked at when they say to me, I don't consider myself a celebrity. And I'm just amazed that Liz said the same thing. And Liz, yes, you are a celebrity. Everybody knows who you are. But I just posted a message because I never thought we'd actually get to a subject that I wanted to actually talk about. So I've been spending the last 15 minutes, and then just when I was about to send it, you said that we were going to talk. But I'm in the Transhumanist Party because I believe in transhumanism. And I want to promote that as much as I can. And I think this party is a great way to do that. I'm not certain that, even though I agree with everything everybody's been saying about police brutality and fair wages and things like that, I believe that we really should be focusing on transhumanism. And I think one of the big and despite the fact that we don't think we're going to win the election anyway, I don't think discussing police brutality and stuff like that is going to help the Transhumanist Party as much as talking about transhumanism in general. So I think one of the biggest problems, and that's what I just posted, with the Transhumanist Party, and the reason why we might not be getting our message out, is something that was said at the very first Enlightenment Salon, or maybe it was the second one years ago, and that's that maybe the name of the party needs to be changed. Okay, most people don't know what the word transhumanism means or transhumanist means, and they get confused by it. And so I've been, talking or thinking and things like that about possible names, and we are all about enhancing people or making better people, making a better future. And so I've proposed some names in this chat thing that I just said. It's like maybe the Transhumanist Party should be called the Future Party, or the Enhancement Party, or the Enhanced Future Party. I've checked, there is no other party that's been called the Future Party. For instance, there was a party in the Ukraine called For the Future Party. I think that maybe we as a party would get more recognition if we had a name that more people understood. And that's a mission, it's one of the main things, Innovation Party. I love it. Okay, that's because that's what it is. That's what we're all about. And somebody just posted, it was Liz, and yeah, well, Tom said let's define transhumanism. And yeah, you know what? Most people don't know what Republican or Democrat means either. Or it's taken a long time, many, many years for people to understand. And still, it's like a lot of people today don't know what those words mean. But everybody knows what future means. Okay, and everybody knows what enhancement means. So it's just something to do with making a better future. And I don't think the word transhumanism is actually makes people think, making a better future. And I don't know, that's one of my key things right now. I would love to see the Transhumanist Party really promote our entire field, because that's personally what I'm all about. I want to see a very enhanced future. I want to see everybody live happier and healthier lives for as long as possible. And that's my comments on that. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are.
I think that's really interesting, Bill. I actually was going to use your story as then how I got involved in transhumanism. But thank you. Yeah, sometimes when I'm talking to people and I'm say, well, I want you to actually look into the US Transhumanist Party. They say, well, what's that? And I say, well, it's an innovation party. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, then I'm interested in looking into it. So yeah, that was, I think that is a valuable thing to add. I haven't been here long enough to understand the whole confusion with the party name, but I'm interested in being part of that conversation.
Yes, certainly. So hopefully my connection will be stable for this. If not, let me know. But we have had a lot of discussions internally about the party name over the years, and we actually had a vote in January of 2020 when the Transhumanist Party and the Longevity Party was being combined about what the name should be. But in that vote, overwhelmingly our members selected keeping the name Transhumanist Party, and I essentially opted at the time to go along with whatever decision the members made. So it wasn't really my personal decision, it was the preference of the membership. And I think the reason why the members decided in this way is because the name Transhumanist Party now has a fairly extensive history associated with it. In October of this year, the Transhumanist Party will be 6 years old. And there has been a lot of brand building that has been done since that time, which it is useful to have and to capitalize upon. Now, with other names, and we have considered other, the main issue has been either that they've been used before or similar names have been used before, or that the organizations that have used those names have taken decisions that have led to a kind of self-destruction. Let me give you an example. The Futurist Party was actually an online political party in 2014, 2015. It was based on the social networking site Reddit. And then what happened in 2015 was the members of the Futurist Party decided to vote to endorse Bernie Sanders. And we know where that went. Ultimately, Bernie Sanders decided to endorse Hillary Clinton. And so the Futurist Party, as this very small online organization, ended up just being a feeder organization into the Democratic Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign. So we have tried to be vigilant to protect against that, to protect against the organization being subsumed in one of the larger sides in the contemporary political struggle, because that would obviate and dilute in a serious way the transhumanist message. So with regard to the term transhumanism.
Let me address what you just said first. The members of the Transhumanist Party, they clearly know what transhumanism means. Okay, so they're not going to be opposed to that name. But and the thought that 6 years this party is well known, I doubt if 0.1% of the world knows of the Transhumanist Party. Okay, so I think that we need to actually come up with a name. I've thrown out examples. I'm not saying the Innovation Party is actually my favorite name so far. Like I like that better than anything I came up with. But my message is, I think we need to come up with a name that everybody understands, and I think that's going to help promote the whole field of what we're all interested in better than what transhumanism is.
Well, I would argue that the impetus is on us to define transhumanism. It's a very strong word. It's out there. It's got all kinds of conspiracy theories about it. It's a very well-known kind of idea. And there is an amount of brand equity that we built up over 6 years. Now, so the onus is on us to really define what that means. That's why I posted just now that we should really take every chance we get in any of these calls to define it first. So people who just have happened upon this thing will understand what we're talking about. But it is it's a movement. It's a very strong word, and the onus is on us again to define it clearly. And there's so many different ways to define it. Obviously, we had that whole campaign of "I am transhuman," which showed the breadth of the types of people that considered themselves transhuman from every walk of life. And you were featured in that series of videos. And so I think it's a catch-all, and I think there has been brand equity. I think it's very important to link us to a movement, a global movement. And I fear, and this was the argument I made back when we had this vote, is the brand equity and argument, and that by calling it something else, a futurist movement, an innovative party, which are all great ideas, that kind of also phrase it at the ends. It kind of disperses the focus of it by tying us to this global movement of transhumanism.
Now, my memory's rusty, but does anyone remember what the acronym was that Gennady came up with? Maybe Gennady knows. What was that? The acronym was PILOT, Party of Longevity and Optimistic Transhumanism. That was one of the options on the ballot because I was trying to find creative acronyms to combine Transhumanist Party with Longevity Party and keep both of those terms in the name. Now, personally, I came up with that acronym, so I would have been happy for the party name to be PILOT, but that was not the will of our members. And I do have to be mindful that as chairman, I'm not an autocrat, and I do have to consult our members on the issues. Now, the conversation, of course, has been for to be in venues like this one. If someday someone wants to call the party PILOT, we may consider that again. I wanted to come back to this idea of the meaning of.
Before we change subjects, I just want to say I did not intend to start a debate, but I do think that we need to be thinking about not just the members. Okay, we need to be thinking about the non-members. That's what we got to do. And I just would like to ask that everybody think about that. Okay. That's
I totally agree with you.
No, it's a great point, and something we need to give a hard think to. And
so
So
what I think is that transhumanism basically, is so much about science and technology. I think it should be in every university, every high school, every STEM education. you know, because they need to know what transhumanism is. The term has been around, you know, a long time, for a long, long time, since UNESCO, right? So people should know about, you know, United Nations, you know, scientific, educational efforts that they're, you know, they've been focusing on, and of course, transhumanism. That's where it started from, UNESCO. So, and that's why we have many books, right? The Transhumanist Handbook is one of them. And then, you know, there are so many other books that they're really wonderful for teaching purposes. So.
You know, I can just say I want to go back to what the original question was about celebrities. I actually did reach out to a few different celebrities about whether or not they'd be willing to come on board or endorse us or something like that. I actually reached out to people that I thought were activist types that were in politics. For example, I did reach out to Cardi B's agent to see if she might endorse us because Bernie Sanders was somebody she was interested in. And then he switched over to endorse Biden. The problem was, as their agent said, was, and they didn't have a problem with the, after I explained what the Transhumanist Party was about, their problem was they're afraid to endorse anybody that is not, that could cause Trump to win. And same thing happened when I approached Sarah Silverman's agent. Same thing. It's not that they didn't like the party; they were afraid that we're gonna take votes away from Biden and Trump's going to win. They just don't want Trump to win. So there's that problem, and I've been facing that more than the definition of transhumanism. I also think that I get what Bill is saying about the idea of transhumanism, the name being a little bit, you know, not understood right away for a lot of people. I remember long ago when I was involved in the World Transhumanist Association before it changed its name, that people, when I told them about transhumanism, they immediately thought transgender. And I had to explain that difference. I don't see that problem as much anymore because the transgender society has really flourished. And now people know that we're not that because they're well defined. But what I think is, it's just a matter of a learning curve. And I do think if we did have a celebrity that came along and came on board, it would bring a lot of attention to us. And then people would start to know what it meant, because the word's been out there for a while. It's just not well known. It just hasn't been spread a lot. But I think with social media and the way things are with social media, we do have an opportunity now that we didn't have, you know, 10 years ago, or, you know, not that many years ago, where you can really get things to go viral. I mean, the word transhumanism, if one celebrity like a Cardi B or anybody says, hey, I like that, you know, I'll endorse that, or I'd like to talk more or interview us, things will explode. You'll see there'll be a tipping point. It happens all the time. Things go viral that we never expect to go viral. And next thing you know, it's all over the place. There's a girl that does lip syncing. Her last name's Cooper. She was lip syncing the president. Now, you know, that seems like a simple enough thing. She did it on TikTok, and now she got invited to the Democratic National Party to talk on stage. So, I mean, you know, things can happen. We just got to get it out there. We got to spread the word. If we can get it in front of the celebrities, you'll see that the definition will take care of itself. We just got to get it out there more. That's part of what we're trying to do with this party. But
well,
you know,
Charlie, that might be a good part of promotion. You know, there are a lot of people that don't want to sway the vote at all in this election, and I can totally understand that. And I have really been here on the precipice of just saying, you know, I mean, my whole idea is that we're saying we're building this party. So you don't have to vote for this party, join the party. And then, you know, that way we can create the future, right? And because these are critical and crucial times to people who feel that they're on either side of that election. But do you think that these people would come on board perhaps after the election? And
Yes.
Because we need to build this party, we need to build it up to millions of followers. This needs to be a mandate that the future moves forward in a more brilliant fashion for humans and every creature on the planet, including the planet itself. So therefore, we have a mandate to move this party forward and get as many people involved as possible. So you're saying yes, that you believe then we'll be able to get a lot larger following and get some of these celebrity type people to join up, and I think that that's crucial, regardless of the name.
Yeah, and there was a famous statement by Michael Jordan. When Barack Obama was running for president, and they asked Michael Jordan, and they're both from Chicago. He said, they asked Michael Jordan, how come you're not endorsing, the first black candidate for president, or why aren't you doing that? And Jordan says, well, Republicans buy gym shoes too. Meaning that, he didn't want to alienate a whole bunch of people that were, where he's selling his product. So we're in a world where it's complicated, and getting an endorsement isn't as easy as it just seems. There's always going to be some consequence for that person. But
Right.
I do think once we get past this election, it's going to open the doors, because I think Trump kind of decimated the Republican Party. I mean, there's a lot of people that, look at the Lincoln Project. That's a group of Republicans that don't want him to win. So a lot of the values that were in the Republican Party have really, they didn't even have a platform at their convention. So it's really just the party of Trump. And if he loses, you're going to see an opportunity, I think, for not just the Democratic Party, which I think is going to probably split in some way, or there's going to be the far left part of that party that's going to want to do their own thing. But there's going to be an opportunity for parties like ours, that a third party that might grow, because we have the opportunity to really appeal to the younger base. I mean, that's the people that are going to be the next big set of voters. Those are the ones that are really interested in the latest technologies, and that's right in our statement. That we're all about putting technology at the forefront of politics. So we have a really ripe opportunity to grow. And I would suggest that, what I'm going to do, from now until the election, but even after the election, I'm not leaving the party. But what I want to do is approach every possible celebrity, including YouTube stars, because they're going to look at what we have to offer, which is some of the solutions you've heard. I mean, when you hear people like Bernie Sanders says, well, I'm going to give you free education. And then the other says, well, how are you going to pay for it? But what we can do on our side is, well, we're going to advance technology to the point that we can bring that cost way down. I mean, there's no reason that education has to be where you go to a college that costs, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a degree, not when you have, a teleological education now, where we have it on screen. And because of COVID, which there's that silver lining where we're advancing all these technologies, and we're having this meeting today because we can't necessarily do it in person, but people are getting more acclimated to be online. It's going to get polished, and you're going to see education be brought way down in cost. And we're going to be the party that's on top of that. We're going to be the ones that say, yeah, this is how we can do it. This is how we can offer you a Harvard education for pennies on the dollar, or if not free. And when you can when you can appeal to people in that way, there's no question we're going to get a lot more members.
Hey,
Yeah, I think that that's the critical thing, is the survival of this party, because this is really, the ideas of this party are the survival of humans, the planet, and every species on it. And what we need to do to get the popularity, to get people to look at it, whether we have to push for voter reform so that some of our ideas do make an impression on government, while we still have this duopoly system, we need to push for the measure and means in order to be heard, because this is a crucial and critical time to be heard and educate the population about a new way to move forward.
Going back to the celebrity thing, I am talking to a celebrity right now that I think would be very useful. I can't mention his name because he's in negotiations right now with Radfest. But he's a super famous movie star. And one of the things that he did say, because when I presented Radfest as something that was part of transhumanism, he did say that he did not like the word transhumanism. So coming back to that, so just keep that in mind. But if he agrees to speak at Radfest, you'll see who he is. And this is somebody that I think could be a very valuable resource, because he's super passionate about what we're doing. So just keep an eye. That's less than a month away. So you'll find out then.
Okay,
that's why I argue. Sorry, that's
one thing we could try. Sorry, I just want to say one thing we could try with these celebrities is not to endorse the party, but to endorse a specific policy that we're policy idea that we are discussing that the other parties are not discussing. So, for instance, you know, for police violence in our platform, other people are discussing this, but we were talking about having the you know, the fingerprint recognition in all the guns. I think we have a few other things there, and then even more radical things, you know, like talking about, did you know longevity biomedicine could save us billions of dollars? You know, did you know in our healthcare system? Or you know, certain types of CRISPR, or not CRISPR, but screening, IVF screening could reduce health expenditures by billions and billions of dollars. And then another one would be using AIs for personalized education. Really innovative things like that that the other parties are not discussing. I mean, the other parties aren't really discussing policy at all, so there's sort of a vacuum there to begin with. But what we can do is we can come in with really innovative policies that, you know, will get attention. Looks like my internet, the internet here is.
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Dan. I do want to say, and I think this is important because Bill had mentioned this numerous times in our discussions. Transhumanism at its core is about making life better through science and technology. And I think using that approach to popularizing that term will help it get more recognition and more acceptance. Per my experience, for most people, the impression of transhumanism is essentially a blank slate. And it's a slate on which anything can be written depending on essentially who communicates these ideas and in what way. And I think Bill is right. Communicating the core ideas of transhumanism should be a priority at this stage of the campaign, especially for those individuals who are perhaps reluctant to vote for us, but might be interested in the ideas and interested in helping later on. Now, with regard to how that term is going to evolve in terms of its acceptance, in terms of its recognition, that may be a multi-year struggle. I know some people have told me, the Gray being the most prominent of them, essentially that popularizing that term, but they personally would see it as more of an uphill battle. And that is, of course, their prerogative. I think they are transhumanists and they're doing what is necessary to advance the transhumanist cause. But for the Transhumanist Party, I think it is a good vehicle for popularizing that term. It is a good vehicle for helping people understand what that philosophy is. And it's a philosophy with a venerable history and a lot of insights to offer. And it can help unify people's understanding of how technology can improve the world. I do believe Charlie and Liz have been doing a great job in their communications, helping that Zach Richardson posed. So Zach Richardson asks, what will you do if elected to curb the power of the FDA, which is really restricting a lot of our progress right now in being able to get new treatments tested and approved and used in patients. And I wanted to hear Charlie and Liz and your thoughts on what we can do to get people to see the magnitude of this problem.
Well, I think there needs to be, an overhaul on that. I really think Liz would speak better to this because she's actually had to encounter that situation personally. Liz, why don't you take the lead on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that kind of is my area of expertise, and this is something that we've spent years looking at. As you know, there's advanced access and there's the right to try in the United States, but neither of those actually serve patients well. As a matter of fact, they serve patients poorly. We have at BioViva, with a company called Integrative Health Systems, built the platform for the future. It is vastly works with medical tourism, so it works outside of the US, but we believe that it should be used inside the US, and regardless of who is leading the country, we believe that we can probably get US acceptance within 5 to 6 years of this platform. And it's based on the agency and autonomy of patients, the rights over their own body, and it's why I so securely fit into the transhumanist movement and the values and platform of the Transhumanist Party. We believe that each patient, each person who will eventually be a patient should have the right agency and autonomy to make the choices for their body that they see fit, and that we need to advance gene and cell technologies today, not tomorrow. So my company has already accomplished this in a myriad of ways. So we are professionals in these relations. We still do believe in drugs that go through a safety process, and that some amount of the US FDA should still stay in place, but that it needs to become a more flexible platform that actually upholds the ethical rights of the patient first. So if you're unfamiliar with the platform of the US Transhumanist Party, I suggest that you read it. We believe that you should have the right to do anything with your body as long as it doesn't hurt the people around you. There are still, implications to, like, for instance, we've covered our belief system on, affecting embryos, which is a big deal. We don't believe that until that there is a clear, understandable health benefit that you should affect the life of somebody else without consent. The articles go as far into talking about cryopreservation and your rights as a cryopreserved person, if you're interested. But my platform with this US Transhumanist Party as the vice presidential candidate is to ensure you, as a human being, have the right and access to any technology that might better your circumstance or situation through gene and cell technologies.
And let me add, Philippe Sierra, who is a key member of the FDA, recently resigned. And he's the person that has cornered me twice after I've given presentations at conferences, and he told me that the FDA would never allow us to do clinical studies because aging isn't a disease. Now that he's resigned, I've been finding that I'm actually gaining a little more access to the FDA than I have before. I had numerous email exchanges with Donald Fink in the last 2 weeks. Liz, have you talked to Donald Fink lately? Because
no, I have not.
We've talked about you, and I think that maybe I should get an email introduction between you and him. But he is very positive. Now he is correct that it's hard to have a study where you don't have a good measurement. And so the whole discussion about looking at diseases instead of something like aging, and I know transhumanism isn't just aging, but it's a lot of things. But and from my perspective, the problem has been trying to get a study to just test aging, and there's nothing really to measure about it. If you've seen my talks, I always talk about the Betty White test. We don't know what to measure, but we all know what the difference is. But Donald Fink has been very open. I think that there's going to be some changes now with the old leaders actually getting out of the FDA. And so I'm very optimistic that things will work, and that. But I still think it's important that we have measurement to be able to do things, diseases that are measurable.
I think I look forward to that connection, Bill. And I don't, at least at the bioinformatics department of BioViva, we haven't had any problem with measurement of people who are undergoing any type of therapeutic intervention through medical tourism, because in all cases, anyone over the age of 35 certainly has indicative markers, biomarkers that we can actually track disease and disease risk. So I think that we can even now work succinctly within the realm of specification of disease and still treat biological aging as long as there's any indicative factors of biological aging diseases, which are actually detectable younger and younger today. So with new technologies. So
I agree with you
Or-
100%, Liz. I'm just referring to the idea of being able to do it without medical tourism, and actually be able to do it in the U.S.
Oh yeah, well today everything that we work with is actually treating a biological factor of an aging disease. So we're not looking at specifically aging, we're just using therapeutics that would treat biological aging at the root core, therefore hopefully eradicating the risk for a myriad of other outcomes. So yeah, I'm really excited to take up those conversations. I don't think that we have to go specifically after aging as a disease in treating patients today. We certainly don't. But in the future, we will be able to, with the change of regulations and how those diseases that are being treated all pin back to biological aging. And so I think that that will create a lot of exciting conversations.
It'll be a it'll be a positive side effect.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we will be treating just aging. I don't think that in the future we'll go after cardiovascular disease or dementia or kidney failure as an independent disease. There, you have a bunch of diseases that are working in tangent, and that's why people over the age of 65 generally have multiple potential diagnosis. It's just the diagnosis with the shortest fuse is the one that's being treated. So I mean, that's been shown in graphs. If you cured one of the diseases of aging, people only go on to live about 2 to 3 years more on average. So we know that eventually we will be treating biological aging, but long before the system is ready to make those determinants, we can treat biological aging by treating the diseases that are associated with aging now.
And
So
when
yeah.
aging, they will call it a disease. So good luck.
Thank you. And I think a related question would be, how do we get the public to see the fight against biological aging as a major policy priority? I've heard Aubrey de Grey speak on the subject recently, and he has said essentially there is likely to come an inflection point at some time sooner than many people think, where the public will go from being largely unaware of these possibilities or apathetic about them to really strongly demanding them of policymakers and politicians. And that could be the opening for the Transhumanist Party to really step in and rise in prominence, as long as we're ready to bring this message to the public about solutions and getting these treatments widely available. So what can the Transhumanist Party do to prepare for that inflection point? And what are your personal expectations as to whether or when that will happen?
So if we look at the diseases of aging, we can see that almost all of them are $1 trillion disease to the economy, at least minimally globally. And things like heart disease are $1 trillion disease in the United States itself as an individual disease. So we've got trillions of dollars that we are throwing into the care of human beings that could actually be put towards the innovation of longer, healthier lifespans and doing what's called compressing mortality, making it so when people do die, if they do die of various indications, that they die in a shorter period of time. Today, we have the retirement age set at the age of 65. But now it is estimated that over 1,000% more people, by the numbers of how many people used to live over the age of 100, will live over the age of 100 today. So that puts us in an enormous economic burden. People retiring at the age of 65 and maybe going on to live twice that amount of lifespan with detrimental chronic diseases. Hundreds of millions of people live with a chronic disease today. All of these are costly. I believe that vastly most of these diseases will be cured genetically, and that we can then get off of the subsistence of terminal medical palliative care. We need to change the US sick care system into an actual healthcare system, grabbing the attention of preventative medicine much more earlier, using artificial intelligence to look through the data, stream through human understanding of the genome, the microbiome, and all of the ohms to create more quickly the type of therapeutics that we need in order to justify that we are an intelligent enough species to actually do this. This is the real self-evolution situation through medicine and technology. And I think that we are there. We are beyond the point of starting. Bill Andrews himself worked for decades now on therapies that are baseline for treating biological aging. They probably are the first therapeutics you should actually look into taking. But what will be the turning point is not only pointing out the financial loss and the financial gain, but actual evidence as to how well these technologies work. So when we show that we can actually start targeting the hallmarks of aging, what's happening at the cellular level that drives aging, as has been done in a multitude of animal studies now. But when we start doing that in humans, then we'll get the interest of the population. We will get people behind these technologies and start driving the interest into making the big changes that will make them possible. And that has been the focus of my effort now for over 5 years. So this is the first year, the last annual year, that we have worked with a company that has specifically worked towards getting people access to these technologies and defining whether they work in humans and how they work in humans, and sorting out what would be the dosages to creating endpoints. And every one of the drugs that we look at through that platform, through this other company, will go through the regulatory system. It's not about circumventing a regulatory system. But I will also have you pay note of the 5 regulated gene therapies that are considered a one-time treatment for a lifetime cure. The least expensive of those 5 is $450,000 to treat one eye. And I will tell you this, that I will always be a strong proponent of medical tourism, regardless of whether I take a drug with my company through the regulation or not, because people need affordable drugs. And they just they simply do not come from today's regulatory system. And that's something that the Transhumanist Party can change and mandate. The drugs, and especially cures, are affordable. If that does not happen, we will continue to promote, again, regardless of where we sit with drugs, medical tourism, because for a fraction of the cost, you can do the same therapies.
That was the perfect answer to Gennadi's question. That was, I mean, I didn't expect such a thorough answer with so many different things, but yeah, you nailed it. I don't know, Gennadi, did you write all that down?
Well,
thank you, Bill.
It was a great answer.
Well, Bill is one of my big mentors, and you can see that actually, for all of the party decisions, this is why Charlie brought me in. I certainly am not a traditional politician, so I may not have the answers to all your questions, but I hope I do here.
You'd be focusing on those things more than on the police brutality and things like that. That's what this whole party stands for. It's what Liz just described to a T.
Yeah,
I hope somebody's recording.
I think we should go back and study what Liz just said, because all of those were excellent. Wait a sec. All of those were excellent talking points. Gennadi?
Yes, and I agree with you, Dan. Just hope my internet connection holds through this. But I think it goes back to a comment that Newton had made about the unique value proposition of the Transhumanist Party. What it is about our message, our advocacy, that leads us to stand apart from the rest, and how we can use that to galvanize a new sense of meaning in the general public, despite all of the crises that the world is experiencing right now. How can we get people to have an understanding that a better future is possible through the progress of science and technology. And I believe Charlie and Liz have articulated that very well here from Jay LaRoe, and he asks, would you consider the Transhumanist Party a secular humanism? And for me, I have written about this in the past. Transhumanism is a kind of logical extrapolation of humanism, in that we take the same valuation of human well-being, human life, but we recognize that the technologies that are on the horizon right now are capable of improving human well-being so dramatically, making people able to live longer, better, healthier. And that really is the original humanist ideal taken to new level.
All right, we're losing you, Gennady.
There was a commentator who asked about whether Mormons are transhumanist. Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Let me ask you with regard to this question about humanism and the relationship of humanism and transhumanism, because I do think that the Transhumanist Party is the logical extrapolation of humanism using science and technology.
And just before Liz and Charlie weigh in, Eliezer Yudkowsky has an article called "Transhumanism is Simplified Humanism." So it's the logical, yeah, exactly what Gennady just said, the logical extension of humanism. But let's let Charlie and Liz weigh in on this.
Well, Eliezer is right, you know, and so is Gennady. I mean, it is. I mean, we're all about humanism. We're about taking care of humans. I mean, that's our goal. The platform that I'm mostly running on is the idea of extending lives, that, you know, to keep humans alive, to keep them healthy, to have them live longer, remove the diseases and all the maladies that are coming with old age. And we want to extend lives. We want to extend healthy health spans and healthy lives. And we want to make people happier. We want to be able to achieve a way to satisfy all those the hierarchy of needs by Maslow, so that people can achieve empathy and compassion for one another, so we can have a better life. So we are a humanist party, and we're just transhumanist because we're all about the latest technologies that can get us there to a more happier and better community of people with better well-being.
Yeah, I think that Charlie's right. But also not taking the focus off of the planet, because I mean, if you want to think of your body having trillions of cells, well, we also live in one big cell, and that's, you know, the atmosphere of our planet, and it's vitally important. And so, our focus is on the whole experience of human health and ensuring the survival of our species.
For those answers.
You're breaking up.
To both of you. This is an ambitious question. Ricky Estes. So, and hopefully you'll see it. The party membership to 1 million plus. That's an ambitious question from one of our members.
The question is, how are we going to get it to 1 million plus?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to get some celebrities on board. I mean, ultimately, we're going to keep spreading the word as much as possible. And I think with the viral nature of social media, we can try to get to that. I mean, our goal would be to have beyond a million members. But again, it's going to be just getting people understanding what we stand for. It's a learning curve. It's not. We're in a strange time right now because so many people are concerned about not having Trump in office. So there's a little reluctance to be involved with anything that's that could take votes away. I understand that. But I think, like we said earlier, once we get to a position where maybe he's not in office, or this election is passed, we can really push forward the ideas of what we stand for and why we can give a better society than the other two parties that are at the top of the people's minds right now.
And also, in order to get to those 1 million followers, don't just ask us, tell us what you could do. Tell us how you can help. This is all of us together. In order to move this forward, we need to share these ideals. And again, it's not about people, particular people in the party. It really is about the ideas of the party. I think we can get millions of people behind that. I think that millions of people would be excited about that, and that would give them something to look forward to in the future and lend their voice to, and feel like they're part of something that actually is for the betterment of humans and the planet, rather than the detriment between them and their neighbors. So please, tell us some of your insight, and share the ideas and share the values of the Transhumanist Party as widely as possible.
Yet I would also argue that that's why it's important, I think, to have one cause that we focus on at a time. And by doing so, whatever the cause is, whether it's UBI or human trafficking, whatever it is, if we put all of our resources toward that one thing, we will attract celebrities, because we will be above the fray. We can avoid the Michael Jordan issue of splitting our audience in any way if we're focused on one thing that everybody can agree on, regardless of party, and put all of our resources to that, and really really just focused our attention, and suddenly we will find that transhumanism is equated to that type of cause, or it's equated to problem solving, problem finding, and problem solving. And so if we are out there doing very practical things, not only pushing policy through state legislatures or whatever, the political side, but actually going out there and supporting groups and organizations that are doing these things, and with the transhuman bent. Thorn, for instance, is a child exploitation cause that uses AI to help track human trafficking networks and things like this. So we can find things that are very human, like that cause, and tie it to transhuman technologies and ideas. And that's why I keep arguing that we should, we can get so scattered and so frayed on so many different issues, with the risk of people having so many different opinions on these different issues, that'll just entropy would be caused. And so by focusing all of our skills and resources and attention on certain one cause at a time, we will not only equate transhumanism and the USTP with that type of practical problem-solving capacity, but we will attract celebrities. We will increase our membership, because we're above the fray. We're not talking about necessarily police brutality, because that could be isolating Republicans, whatever form we take. So that's why I think it's one of the clearest ways to really increase our membership is to focus our skill sets and our resources on a very human cause like that, whatever it is that everybody can agree on, and just show how we can, as a party, have practical solutions. And we know that after COVID and after all of this stuff, the economy is decimated. We're kind of in this lacuna right now where we're not really dealing with that, but we really can come up with real world solutions to help people and design a new type of economy based on things. This is some part of my work is like that. So I think if we really focused our resources and our people and our ideas and minds on practical solutions that will help people after this period,
I agree with Tom, and I think that we really need to be able to address, though, all of the major issues that are going on. So, Charlie and I's platform is vastly on the health of humans and the welfare and the longevity, and changing, footing into new medicine and new ways to move forward that in the long run will be less expensive than the technologies we have today and create a healthier society. But what I would really like to see is, Tom has a lot to say about compassion and the area of human trafficking, which is massively important. There is not one point more important than the other. And Newton has a lot to say about the education system and what could change there. And other people on this call, all of you have had some input into areas that are critical for the success of humans. I would like us to split into concisely targeting our areas and in always merging as one group with the answers to those problems. I mean, I think that Charlie knows as well as I know, if we were actually elected president and vice president of the United States, we would organize the best minds in the world to solve these problems, who also had the same end mission as we did, which is a healthier, happier, more compassionate world for the future. So everyone on this call, you are those people. And so in order to answer to each one of these causes, you can do that individually and help us build a bigger party inclusively. It certainly, the idea isn't just about Charlie and I am an expert in one area, but not in every area. And that's what would make us more powerful and strong, is to have everyone doing those parts. And I really implore you to do that and to help us have answers for those bigger areas that we would, yes, absolutely enact as you as an expert in that area, and having the data behind, a new response and a new way forward. So thank you, Tom. I mean, I think that your voice is absolutely critical. I think that when you talk on certain things, we think, oh, we're so unqualified. And when I talk, you might think the same thing, or you might not. But it doesn't matter. Together, we're stronger. And that's what the future is going forward. And that's kind of what we're fighting against, is these figureheads that we feel like in politics are making decisions for the rest of the country, who are not making decisions for your health, happiness, or welfare, or even maybe the existence of a planet in the next 20 years, regardless of their platform and what they say they're going to do. They historically have not done it. So therefore, here we are, and that gives us legitimacy and the reason to move forward. So I implore that everyone on this panel, as members of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, take one area of a decisive move forward based on our platform, and help us move that agenda forward, so that together we're stronger than we are apart.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with Tom, I agree with Liz, and it's really important that we have a lot of experts in different areas. Of course, an expert also argue about different things. It's good because we need to brainstorm ideas, right? So that means we need leadership in every area. We need leadership in biotechnology, like what Liz is doing. We need leadership in protecting children, like that's what Tom is suggesting. We need all these things put together. So it's not like one person, it's not like one president can do all that thing. No, a good president is the person who actually assign responsibilities to the great, leaders in that field, right? Because like JFK wasn't a rocket scientist, but he was leading the nation to go to the moon, and he succeeded, because NASA was able to hire the best engineers, the best scientists, right? Because of his mandate. So that's what we need. We need a good leader, strong leader who have mandates to use science and technology to help human beings to solve all these problems in the world, to actually bring peace to all the nations in the world, right? Not just one country, but the whole planet should be peaceful, so that and of course to protect the environment so that humanity can live longer on Earth. That's what we're, because it doesn't work if we live 1,000 years if the planet is getting destroyed. It won't be good. So we need to protect people as well as animals and trees and everything on Earth to have really healthy environment for everyone.
Yeah, I really would like to do that. I'd like to be able to defer certain questions to certain people who are experts in that area, because I don't think the future moving forward is led by one person. I think that it's an inclusive discussion, and I think that's the difference between this party and other parties. You know, a friend of mine who went to Oxford University for their advanced degree said that the education that you get there is to not to be able to remember everything yourself. You're not trying to be the smartest person in the room. You're there to meet the smartest people in the room in different areas so that you can pull on their expertise when you need them, and or you know how to do a search at minimum. So if you say, you know, what is a really answer to a critical question, if you know, it takes a lot of someone's mind to be able to hold all of that, which is one of the reasons Newton be working on AI. But all of those answers are out there, and it takes time, and it should take time to formulate an answer, because if it doesn't, then essentially I'm just going for the vote of the cult of personality, which leads us right back to where we were before, which is human ego, which is what is stifling and stalling us from innovation.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's time to start bringing the session to a close so that we can conclude at about the 2-hour mark. But I wanted to ask our other officers, David Shoemaker, Art Ramon Garcia, Alex Black, and Pavel Ilin, if you had any questions or comments for our candidates.
Yeah, thank you very much. Liz, Charlie, I got you on the hot seat for a moment. So the questions that I have for the both of you, which I'm sure you'll ably answer, have to do with, it goes with the name transhumanist. It goes with the idea of focusing on a single topic. Thank you, Tom. It goes on the idea of focusing our expertise in multiple areas. I want to try to draw all that together and say, what would be really great would be to have talking points for all the people that go out and address the public about transhumanism, so that we say transhumanism is, and maybe we list 3 things, because I think my psychology courses remind me that maybe that's about how many different thoughts you can keep in your mind at one time. And whether that's true or not, that's what the point that I'm coming at. So from your presidential, vice presidential candidate pulpits, what 3 things should we be focusing on when we go out and talk to people transhumanism is?
Well, you know, we're the transhumanist political party, and so it's almost the same, but you know, we're talking about if they're going to ask about how we're going to address issues. So while transhumanism really is about, you know, using the latest technologies to advance our lives and our health, they might be asking us questions about what about UBI, or what about healthcare, or immigration or something. So as people representing a party, a political party, which we are, you know, we have to know how to answer those kind of questions. And a lot of that goes back to, you know, what we stand for, which is that we would be looking to use the latest technologies to address those individual issues. So when somebody asks about how do you support UBI, then we have to say, well, it has to be supplemented with technologies like 3D printing or molecular manufacturing devices. There's other things like you know, universal medical help for everyone, which I think everybody should have medicine, because, you know, again, we're about not dying. So how do you do that? Well, we have to cut the costs, and we can do that by using the latest in you know, advances through online communication skills. And then of course that goes for education. You know, we can cut the costs immensely by using online education. And by cutting all those costs, we have the technologies to really stop wasting a lot of the money that we do right now in our budget. 54% of our discretionary budget is used on the military. Well, why aren't we, you know, putting a bigger chunk of that towards existential questions about why, you know, how we prevent death? So it's not a, we can have these kind of set answers about transhumanism, but the Transhumanist Party has to have a little bit more of a nuance to it. At least that's my opinion on that. What was your question about the name? You said about the name itself. Is that just, you want to change it too, or you?
Well, I do have some thoughts about the name, but really the point of it is that I think people are confused sometimes when I talk to them about transhumanism. And if I'm given 15 minutes to speak, I may spend 5 or 10 minutes trying to get rid of the baggage that other people that haven't heard of transhumanism before but think they know what it means. And I want to be able to say, no, well, thank you for that. However, what transhumanism means to me is number 1, number 2, and number 3. And I think it'd be really great, since we're all going out and speaking to other groups, if we all reinforced each other. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay. Well, like I said, when I get posed these questions, because I'm running for politics, I kind of have to address the different issues. As far as transhumanism, for me personally, I mean, it's all about life extension, really. I think that's the main goal. It's about extending our lives as long as possible, and not just our lives, but also our health. We want to live healthy, and then happiness. I mean, you could kind of make those 3 things if you really want to make it 3 things. It is about living longer, living healthier, and living happier. I mean, and who doesn't want that if that's really what it comes down to? Because that's kind of what it is. I mean, and then how we get there, well, that's where our Transhumanist Party gets into place, if we can, change policy. But, if Liz, what do you think? What's your 3 points?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I look at health span, the environment, and equity of people. But the truth is that I think that what you were saying, David, was more of a conversation piece than a question. And so again, I think that that's something that we need to envision as a party. We definitely see a longer, healthier, happier life through the innovation of technology. And we can all agree on that. But if there are specific points that may speak more to the root of the average voter and get more interest, then we should talk about those. But they're basically semantics outside of our original mission, but semantics matter. So, I think that Charlie essentially answered that. And again, in our calls and in our meetings, we need to keep our minds open for innovative thinking as well, and how to help each other. Because certainly if there is some information that we think that is really important for this campaign, we should be communicating that with the party holders like Charlie, in order to impress upon him something that we think that might be more important. But I think that Charlie really did encapsulate what we're looking at. But I do see that there seems to be a little bit of question still about the identity of the Transhumanist Party as an innovative party, and exactly what it stands for. And so we do need to make sure that that's clear in all of our messaging.
Right, that's very important indeed, because transhumanism is all about transforming, transcending humanity as a whole,
Now,
of the group of people, not just one person. I think that is very important. I get questions from people like, for example, is transhumanism only for the rich people? Is it only for a group of people who, who have access to longevity? Is it available for everybody? Things like that. I think it's important. That we see society as a whole, we see, humanity as a whole, not just 1 or 2 people.
Well, transhumanism is for everybody. It's I think a big part of what we're really pushing is the technology that can bring costs down for everything. And, that's kind of really our goal when we talk about transhumanism, is about democratizing all these technologies to the point that everybody can have access to them. And this is where I talk a lot about the economy of abundance, because there will be a time where we'll have mass production of a lot of things, and then it will be a lot more affordable for everybody. Because I have no interest in this being only for rich people. That's That's a terrible idea, actually.
Well, yeah, and you can actually look at the U.S. healthcare budget for each individual in the country is over $11,000 annually, and it's actually increasing. We have the largest budget for human healthcare of all the industrialized countries, but we have the shortest lifespan in all the industrialized countries. Another thing is, you know, we're 5% of the world's population. We take 75% of the prescription medicine globally. And we have also, again, we're at the shortest lifespan of all the industrialized countries. Something has gone wrong. We can fix that. And we actually have, based on that budget, an enormous amount of money to fix it.
Yes. Now, Alex Black have a chance to ask any questions before we conclude.
I think she's.
I don't have any questions, but more thoughts on what we spoke of. As far as the name, the
Yes.
Transhumanist Party,
Art Ramon, please.
I would maybe perhaps suggest shortening it to the Transhuman Party. It would make it a lot easier to create logos and graphics for it. And just the thought, I'm not sure, I Googled it and I couldn't find anything, but is it possible as a third party to create some sort of coalition with other third parties as far as a legal fund so that we can start challenging some of these laws that make it difficult for third parties to get on the ballot? And like I said, it's a thought. I don't know if it's out there, but thank you.
I do believe that there's a whole movement for voter reform, and I think that it's really important. So if you look at a country like the UK, where they have the Tory system, there's a weighted vote system, so that if another party comes close to the vote, which may or may not happen to some smaller parties, they do get to make some of the decision making for those parties. One of the great reasons to get the Transhumanist Party more members is to ensure that other groups are actually looking at some of the things that we think are important measures and why people would follow us. But voter reform could do a lot towards that, especially if we had a weighted system. So you got to pick your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. Well, I would guess that maybe even in this coming election, maybe the first choice would be a party line duopoly choice, but we would very likely be a lot of people's second choice. And that would give us weight in what sort of laws and what sort of representation people got after the leading party got into candidacy, won the candidacy. So I'm really excited about that type of voting system because it allows people to have more of a voice of the things that they truly believe in until there can be actual change.
I agree with Liz on weighted voting, and I think it would be nice if we had the Tory system. And I do think when we get past this next election, we will have a really great opportunity to really push forward with third party candidacy. And I would also like to see us get a lot more people involved on local levels. Gennady, are you there with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Now let's go to Pavel or Alex Black for any questions or comments that they have.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a question. Transhumanists have a tendency to boil in within within one pot and talk to other transhumanists, but not going out and not to engage in a not comfortable dialogues with non-transhumanist people. How do you think we can reach the people who not only not heard about transhumanism but also actively disagree with it? And how can we convince them to switch sides?
Well, I think having debates like the ones we had in Chicago, you know, the third party debates was a really good way to do something like that. Obviously, I talked about celebrities and social media before. I think just talking about it in general, you know, as contentious as it is right now between these two parties, everywhere I go, people talk about something about the Trump, or either they like him or hate him or whatever. But because of it, it's much more right on the tip of people's tongues to open up those discussions, whether I'm in you know, waiting in line or at an Uber or something. Although nowadays, of course, because of this, you know, shutdown, it's a lot harder to do that. But it really does open up the possibility to talk about these things a lot more than before.
I think Charlie's right. I think this is the reason, a big reason besides thinking Charlie's a fantastic person, that I thought that this was a great time for this party. This is a fantastic time, guys. This is a fantastic time to start talking about peaceful relations and education and other choices, and the way that we actually want to move forward as a country, and starting to actually get people connected to each other instead of divided from each other. There's a lot of divisiveness. And we can actually be a breath of fresh air there, and bring critical, rational thinking to the world. And we have a lot to offer. So, you know, if there are people you're afraid to have a conversation about this with, really, maybe it's because you're framing it in a wrong way. It's not about debating Trump or Biden. It's about a new and fresh cut forward. Just, you know, moving forward in a way that's actually better for humans, that is more about democracy, that is more about using technology and the money that the government spends on things to ensure that you have a future and a better outcome. You, your children, your parents, your grandparents, hopefully they're still alive. It's a great time to have this conversation. I don't think that there has been a better time to have a conversation about moving forward in a different way. If this mess and fiasco that we're in, and so much hate and loathing can do anything, it can be about creating a conversation that's actually good to have, healthy to have, wholesome to have, and will make a really kick-ass, amazing future.
Yes, agreed.
Absolutely.
Questions for our candidates. Yes, Alex, please go ahead.
Okay. Most of my notes you guys already covered. I did want to mention to Newton, who's probably already bailed out, that education is mostly what we do. I mean, we educate each other every day. We stay in groups of people that are emerging the new world. And to Tom, I really want to get back to how do we increase a more worldwide sense of belonging, because it seems that exclusion is the source of most maladaptive behaviors. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. I'm trying to, but you guys rock. Done. I don't hear you.
I think it was addressed to Tom.
Well, yeah, just that's the point, is exclusion, and we need to be more inclusive, and we can do that as a party because we do have a big tent, and we the one central theme, I think, is that we all are looking toward the future and are innovative and are challenged by these opportunities, you know, challenged by the challenges, and I think a lot of us, you know, are concerned, and we want to get serious about the issues our kids and their kids are going to deal with, and no other party is doing that in a real way. And so yeah, It's all about inclusivity, and because after Trump, post-Trump, we're going to need to bring these people back. You know, the red hat wearing Trump supporters are still Americans, you know, and they think of the crazy liberals as, you know, they got to understand we're all in this together. We need to avoid another civil war. And, you know, I think that's possible with something like what we talk about, you know, innovation and just new ways of being inclusive and understanding that a lot of these things are just symptoms of systemic issues. So yeah, it's all about inclusivity.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Tom. And now I think it is time for us to bring this session to a close, and let us conclude with final remarks from our candidates, Charlie and Liz. What do you want to share as a parting message to our viewers?
Okay, I'll go first. Well, I think we covered a lot of good topics here today. I want to thank Gennady for letting us do this, and the panel, and glad to see Bill Andrews was able to come on board too today. You know, one of the first questions that I was asked early on in my candidacy, when I was first came as the party nominee, someone asked me at one of the interviews was, what would be the first thing you would do if you were to get to win? And I said, well, I would want to surround myself with the smartest people that I could to solve the problems that we're all facing. And I got to tell you, I had an opportunity to surround myself with someone really smart when I got a chance to pick Liz Parrish as my VP candidate. So that's basically what I wanted to close with, because I'm really proud and impressed with her, and I'm really glad that she's the VP running mate. And we've had one chance now to work together at an interview with Dr. Sharif Rana the other day, and I look forward to doing more of those. As you can see, she's brilliant. So Liz, why don't you go ahead and do your closing remarks now?
Oh, geez. Well, thank you, Charlie. I mean, I was honored to be invited in. And the reason that I accepted the vice presidential candidacy is because of all the incredibly intelligent people in this Transhumanist Party. I think the world would absolutely be amazed. Gennady has done such a great job at articulating the mission of this party. He is an incredible party leadership. Everyone on this call has added to crucial information that the world needs about moving forward, and you will continue to do so. If I have my way about it, everyone on this call will be putting in some sort of letter of intention. I implore you to do that, to where you can best suit this party and be an expert in your area in order to bring us even more enlightening conversation on the latest topics that are crucial to humankind today. So my basis is in human health and genetic modification, and I appreciate running on the ticket for the benefit of humankind in that respect. But we will be bringing our heads together for a more inclusive conversation to all these critical points, because you can't really put one over the top of another. Certainly the human trafficking of children is shocking and terrible, and racism is completely unjust, and the inequities of gender or color of your skin it can't be denied. So even if I'm a proponent of extending your human healthy lifespan, what is the meaning of it if we can't get along or we have no planet to live within? So I want to thank everyone for being on here. I want any of the listeners of this project to please become a voice, especially if you have a strong standpoint of which you align with our mission. Please share and like all of our information, and let's get those 1 million followers, and let's move that to 2 and then 10. Let's go up exponentially.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Charlie and Liz, for joining us today. It's been a great honor. And to everyone in the discussion, everyone watching, live long and prosper.